If you play fantasy football, you've seen it all year long. Upside wins weeks. You need that huge weekly upside, players that could go off for big point totals. Well, we're going to give you some of our favorite boom picks for week 13. First, don't forget, if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy, this is a great time to do it. If you sign up right now using promo code ENDGAME, not only do you get a deposit match of 100% for every dollar you put in up to $100, you can also take the new customer special of Dak Prescott going higher than zero point 0.5 total yards on Thursday night. That's right. Dak gets 1 yard. You get that pick. It's freebie. And you can pair it with any other pick that you like. And there's a good chance you triple your money on your very first pick 'em. So check it out now. Download the app or click the link down below to go to Underdog. Make sure you use promo code ENDGAME, though, to take advantage of all these specials. All right, we're looking for that huge upside this week. Who do you have in mind?
I got a guy in mind who I think is quite possibly the most underrated player in all of fantasy football this year, and that is Michael Pittman. This guy has just been nothing but great this year. It didn't matter when it was early in the season with the rookie Anthony Richardson, he was great, and it doesn't matter now with the stash Gardner Minshew. He's still been fantastic. 6 straight games with at least 14 PPR points. He's had double-digit targets in 7 of his games. 7 of his 11 games, by the way, because they've had the bye, he's had double-digit targets. He's been nothing but fantastic. And every week on our start-sit streams, if you watch those, we get so many questions about Michael Pittman. Should I start him? Should I start him over this guy or this, wide receiver 3 or whatever? Michael Pittman has been great, and he's going to be great again this week because he gets the Tennessee Titans. Talk about it. This is a secondary you want to attack. 13 targets last week against the Bucks. Now he gets another fantastic matchup. He's probably going to see double-digit targets again this week against the Titans. This offense, it's basically him, Josh Downs, and nobody else. They don't throw to anybody else. There's 2 guys here. It's what you love to see. Michael Pittman has been great this year. Gets a fantastic matchup in week 13. He's going to continue to be great, and he's going to boom this week. Don't worry about it, whether you should start him or some wide receiver 3 on your bench. Just put Pittman in and reap the rewards of all the fantasy points.
Yeah, there's some defenses, especially in the secondary, that you want to exploit and just roll out these high-end wide receivers against. I feel like Washington fits that bill. And look, I know that they just fired Jack Del Rio as defensive coordinator. Do we think that this makes the defense suddenly better the rest of the season? I'm going to bet on no. I don't think it's going to make it worse or better. It's going to be the same defense that has given up the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers and the most touchdowns to wide receivers. Now this week, they have the misfortune of facing the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, could just do Tyreek Hill things and be the number 1 fantasy receiver. But then let's look at Jalen Waddle, a guy who, let's be honest, has been kind of disappointing this year, had a couple of big games, but really has been letting down based on expectations. Was a 2nd round pick in a lot of fantasy drafts. Well, finally came through with a big game last week, went for 8 catches and 114 yards in really a tough spot against the Jets. And now he gets the Washington Commanders. Yes, please. So Waddle, we know, has that big play upside. My worry with Waddle, not just that he hadn't been getting targeted as much as we would like, but also wasn't sure if the back was bothering him, but there's some other reason he hadn't been as involved. Well, I'm not worried anymore because he was definitely involved last week, and now it's almost too good to be true this matchup against Washington. He really doesn't even need a high target share to smash this secondary. So I'm going to say if you got Waddle at this point, you just have to roll him out because the upside is too big to ignore. All right, who else do you feel is pretty much a must start in week 13?
Yeah, I put Rachaad White on the booms last week, and I don't usually pick the same guy 2 weeks in a row because it's like, hey, I'll just pick him every week till he booms. But look, he didn't boom last week, but he had 100 yards rushing, got you 13 PPR points. He certainly wasn't bad by any stretch, but I think he's going to be even better this week because now he gets the Carolina Panthers. This is the defense where running backs go to revive their season, right? Remember 2 weeks ago, Tony Pollard was a total bust. Then he played the Panthers, scored a touchdown, 18 fantasy points later, feeling good about him. Last week, Derrick Henry, starting to look like a bust. What happened? 2 touchdowns against the Panthers, everybody's feeling good again. That's going to be Rachaad White this week. This defense gives up the most touchdowns to running backs, like by a wide margin. You got to feel good about him finding the end zone this week. They're at home in Tampa Bay. Game script should be on his side. I mean, game script's really never not on his side, but he gets all the work here. Like I said, coming off a 100-yard game against a Colts defense that, no, they're not good, but they're better than this Panthers defense. I think he can get close to 100 yards rushing again. He can catch more passes. And like I said, major touchdown upside this week. So while he didn't quite boom last week, he was good, but he didn't boom. This is the week where he will boom. Make sure you keep him in your lineup. And look, if you're doing those underdog picks that Pierre talked about, you got to take his line as well. 57.5 rushing yards against his Panthers defense. I'm smashing the higher on that. No reason he can't do that again. 100 yards last week. You pair that line with that Dak Prescott line. Easy way to triple your money right away. Make sure you use promo code ENDGAME when you sign up at Underdog Fantasy. Take that new customer special. Take the higher on Rachaad White. Triple your entry.
All right, now I'm going to talk about a player that I was really worried about last week. And, well, I mean, he didn't go off, but he showed me enough that I feel now comfortable starting Marquise Brown, a.k.a. Hollywood. You know, I'll take it a step further. In this matchup, now that I've seen that the heel is not an issue, the target share is there again, I'm going to say he could go off in week 13. He's going to get a steady diet of targets because they've had a lot of injuries other than him. Michael Wilson remains out. Zach Pascal is out. There's just not a lot of other guys to go to. The Hollywood-Kyler connection is what we've been waiting for. Now, Pittsburgh is a defense that, although they're pretty good, they will give up some points to wide receivers, but they play a lot of man coverage, and Marquise Brown just happens to be one of the guys who has the biggest discrepancy between his effectiveness against man coverage versus zone coverage. He's not bad against zone, but he's so much better against man. So this is a matchup kind of tailor-made for him. So now that all these concerns that I had before are alleviated and the matchup is very favorable, I will have to say that Hollywood, I think, could finally have his first really big game in a long time. All right, who else do you think might go off in week 13?
Yeah, speaking of wide receivers that are great against man, that is Brandon Ayuk. When you look at this 49ers, you look at Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, like you said with Hollywood, he's also very good against zone, but he destroys man coverage, whereas it's the opposite for Deebo. He destroys zone coverage, and we saw that last week against the Seahawks. I was saying, hey, I actually like Deebo more than Brandon Ayuk this week because they play a lot of zone, but I like Brandon Ayuk way more than Deebo this week because the Eagles play the 12th most man and only the 21st most zone of any defense. And the one thing about their secondary, not to mention all the man coverage, they haven't been very good. They're giving up a ton in the passing game. We just saw it on Sunday in that game against the Bills. You can throw on this defense. You can pick up big yardage in the passing game. This should be obviously the game of the week. I'm sure this is the game we're all the most looking forward to. It should be a high-scoring game. There should be a lot of points in this game. And I think the 49ers are going to have to throw the ball a lot. And this screams big Brandon Ayuk game against this Eagles secondary who play a ton of man. I think Brandon Ayuk, look, he wasn't even bad last week against that Seahawks defense. But this week, he's going to be much better. I think he smashes this week. Make sure you have Brandon Ayuk in all your fantasy lineups.
All right, so I'm going to go down a little bit. This is not a guy who's an absolute must start. And you know what? I'm going to talk about a guy who hasn't even scored a single touchdown all year. I know we're getting risky here, but hey, it's week 13. I'm feeling lucky. I think that Evan Ingram is due. Now, I know picking a tight end in and of itself is risky enough, but let me talk about why I think this could be the week that Ingram not only scores, finally, but also smashes. I mean, the Bengals, it's a great matchup. They allow the second most fantasy points to the tight end position, while at the same time allowing the sixth fewest to wide receivers. This kind of makes them like a tight end funnel defense, right? They're going to limit the outside, giving up the inside, and this favors, obviously, the tight end in Ingram. This is also a player who has seen consistent target share, even though it doesn't feel like it, because in fantasy, you know, his point totals have been a little bit more up and down. Either has big yardage or he doesn't. Obviously not scoring touchdowns. Well, look, he's been targeted at least 5 times and caught at least 4 passes in every game. So you know the floor is there. But look, we're talking boom, we're talking upside. Why might he finally put a big yardage and get on the board? Well, I already told you about the matchup. It's great. And then second of all, the Jags want him to score. They even talked about it last week. They were trying to get him in the end zone. They're aware of this. They're going to try to get him the ball. And look, we know they're going to have plenty of chances. This Cincinnati offense is not going to be on the field that much with Jake Browning. Sorry, they just aren't. Jacksonville is rolling at home on offense. I think they'll have plenty of chances to feed Ingram the ball. So, yeah, it's not guaranteed, of course, but I feel this is the week that Ingram finally hits pay dirt and smashes in fantasy. So with all these buys and all these injuries at tight end, if you have Ingram, set and forget. All right, I feel like you have one more boom player in mind.
Yeah, let's keep getting risky with quarterback Sam Howell, who hasn't been great the last couple of weeks after being very good for a while, but I think he bounces back in a big way this week. He's at home, which should help. Playing this Miami defense, which you think, oh, that's not great, but they haven't really been fantastic against quarterbacks either. They're allowing the 11th most points to fantasy quarterbacks, and they've played some really bad quarterbacks this year. They've gotten the Patriots twice. They've played the Giants, Bryce Young and the Panthers. They played the Raiders with Aiden O'Connell. They just played Tim Boyle. That's 6 of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL they've gotten to play this year, and they've still allowed the 11th most points to quarterbacks. But what I really like about Sam Howell this week is this is a game where he's probably going to have to throw it a ton because this Washington defense has gone from bad to absolutely atrocious. They can't stop anybody. You talked about it with Jalen Waddle. This Dolphins offense is going to go scorched earth on the Commanders, and that means Sam Howell is going to be dropping back 40, 50 times in this game. But unlike last week against a strong Dallas defense, he gets a much softer, sorry Pierre, Dolphins defense. I know Jalen Ramsey is back and they have good corners, but this defense doesn't scare me enough. I think Sam Howell bounces back, goes over 300 yards, throws for a couple of touchdowns at home in a game where they're going to have to basically just throw the ball and try to keep pace. I think Sam Howell comes through with another big week.
So, I said, feeling risky this week, going for some real boom picks. Chris, you might want to close your ears here. I'm about to recommend Taysom Hill. That's right. Let's go full Taysom this week, and I'll tell you why. Now, we know the rule of Taysom. He only goes off when he's on your bench, right? When you put him in your lineup, then he does nothing. Well, last week, coming out of the bye, we didn't really see either a heavy or light Taysom week. It was kind of in between. Like, he did something, but not a lot. He's going to have to do a lot this week because the Saints are just decimated at wide receiver, all the injuries. Michael Thomas already out for a while, possibly rest of the season with a knee injury. Rashid Shaheed left last week early, and there's a good chance he's missing week 13. And then Chris Olave in the protocol. Look, not sure exactly whether he'll play at this time right now, but he might miss too. At this point, they need Taysom Hill to be the wide receiver, the tight end, and the running back? Who knows? But he could do all of those. He got 55 yards last week. He was used as a receiver. He's going to be used more as a receiver, and they are now going to get to face the Detroit Lions, who could definitely put up points against them. Clearly, we don't know what we're going to get with Taysom Hill on any given week. But I feel like this coaching staff, this team that just lost and is hurting at receiver, they're going to have to pull out all the stops this week. And no, I don't think that includes pulling out Lynn Bowden off the bench or all of a sudden getting A.T. Perry involved, which they didn't do last week. It's going to be Taysom Hill. So you know the risk. You know what you get with Taysom when he's in your lineup. This might be the week where he delivers when you expect it. All right, those are our favorite boom picks for week 13. You want to know about every other position, who we like and who we don't? Well, we got you covered. Check out our playlist right here with all the advice that you need to win.